Hollywood, a world of glitz, fame, and fortune. But what if I told you that behind the red carpets and flashing cameras, there are stories you were never meant to see? Stories of power, influence, and abuse that stretch back decades, and even some shocking truths about the Oscars themselves. Stick with me, because what you're about to hear will change the way you see Hollywood forever. Oh, God is good, God is great, fear. There's only one that lingers, public humiliation. But I've reached the point where I don't care anymore. I'm not afraid. I've stared into horrors most people couldn't imagine. Imagine a group of children, allegedly manipulated into acting without conscience, horns curling grotesquely from their heads, battering rams pounding against reinforced walls, the number 666 blazing in blazing red neon overhead. Symbols historically associated with occultism dating back thousands of years to early European and Egyptian mysticism. I've seen how such rituals, documented in psychological studies of cult behavior, can create intense fear and submission, even in adults. I went from one surreal nightmare to the next, each more psychologically disturbing than the last, until Christopher Walken, started smiling. In that instant, a chill ran through me, because I realized the human mind is capable of processing fear in ways that history, art, and science have warned us about for centuries. And in that terrifying moment, I thought, oh no, Christopher Walken is the Antichrist. If you watched this year's Oscars, brace yourself. Find some holy water, light a candle, sit down, because what I'm about to reveal isn't just another Hollywood rumor. It's a tale that will change the way you think about fame and the glittering world of cinema. For decades, whispers have spun in shadowed corridors. There are forces behind the glamour that most people would never believe. Legends circulate about why some of Hollywood's most beloved figures have abruptly walked away from after-parties, red carpets, and late-night celebrations. One of the most persistent stories comes from an event in 2003, when Denzel Washington and his wife, Pauletta, reportedly left an exclusive celebration hosted by a music mogul. It was more than a quiet departure. Eyewitnesses say they left with haunted expressions, forever changed by what they saw. Now let me be clear. What follows is told in the spirit of a mythic thriller, not a news report. In the world of Hollywood lore, where truth and folklore blur, there are tales that go far beyond champagne toasts and polite conversation. According to these stories, some after-parties don't end with glasses clinking and laughter fading into the night. Instead, they supposedly transform into secret gatherings filled with symbolic rites, intense theatrics, and rituals shrouded in mystery. In this narrative, these aren't your typical wine and cheese affairs. They are depicted as immersive experiences, a theater of shadows and secrets where the unwary might feel overwhelmed by forces that seem almost supernatural. People speak of hidden rooms, whispered incantations, and gatherings that blur the line between performance and ritual. To the imagination of this dramatic retelling, these are moments where Hollywood's gloss slips, revealing something dark and irresistible beneath. So before you dismiss it as fanciful speculation, remember, every legend has its founding moment, and every myth is rooted in fear, fascination, and the human desire to question what lies beneath the surface of glittering fame. And no, these aren't the parties the cameras catch, the ones with flashing lights and smiling celebrities. These are the stories whispered behind closed doors, the secret gatherings hidden in shadowed locations, attended by only a select few. In Hollywood lore, these are the events that industry insiders warn about, where fame comes at a price few outsiders understand. Some say this is exactly what Mel Gibson and Denzel Washington tried to hint at in their public statements and interviews, cautionary tales that were largely ignored or dismissed by the media. Mel hasn't attended the Oscars in years, retreating from the glare of the red carpet and the scrutiny of the public eye. Denzel, on the other hand, remains selective, appearing only occasionally at ceremonies, careful and deliberate in his choices. Stories circulate that he approached fame with caution, guided by his principles and personal faith, using his platform to preach and uphold values he refuses to compromise. Some say he warned fellow actors of the dangers of succumbing to the pressures of the spotlight, advising caution at moments of greatest triumph. Consider, for example, the night of the infamous Will Smith incident at the Oscars, the slap heard around the world. In the realm of Hollywood mythology, some claim that experienced figures cautioned Smith about the pitfalls of sudden fame, about the invisible pressures that strike at moments success seems absolute. Whether coincidence or fate, the world watched as the lives of public figures shifted in the months that followed, and the stories of their triumphs and trials became cautionary tales in a city built on both illusion and ambition. This year's Oscars ceremony was once again a spectacle filled with design, tradition, and layers of meaning that reflect nearly a century of cinematic history. At the center of it all stands that iconic gold statuette everyone covets, the Academy Award of Merit, universally known as the Oscar. Since its debut at the very first Academy Awards in 1929, more than 3,000 of these statuettes have been presented to winners across every major category, from acting and directing to technical achievements. The Oscar statue itself was designed in 1928 by Cedric Gibbons, the legendary art director at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and brought to life in 3 dimensions by Lowe's Angel sculptor George Stanley. Standing 13.5 inches tall and weighing 8.5 pounds, the figure depicts a stylized knight holding a crusader's sword, poised atop a reel of film with 5 spokes, each spoke representing one of the Academy's original branches: actors, directors, producers, technicians, and writers. Over the decades, the Oscar has become far more than a trophy. It is a powerful symbol of achievement in filmmaking, representing excellence and artistic accomplishment recognized by peers around the world. Its design has remained remarkably consistent for nearly a century, with only minor adjustments to the base since 1945. The composition of the statue itself reflects changes in manufacturing practices too. Early Oscars were cast in solid bronze and plated with 24-karat gold, and during World War II, plaster versions were made due to metal shortages before recipients later exchanged them for metal versions. The origins of the nickname Oscar add another layer to the statuette's lore. Academy librarian Margaret Herrick is often credited with an early reference to the name, remarking that the statue looked like her uncle Oscar. By the mid-1930s, the nickname had become so widespread that Hollywood columnist Sidney Skalski was using it in print. While the Oscars design carries rich artistic and symbolic elements connected to Hollywood's celebration of cinema, there is no documented evidence that the statuette reflects the iconography of ancient religions or secret rites. What can be stated with accuracy is that the Oscar has stood for nearly a century as the world's most recognizable film award, honoring artists and technicians whose work has shaped the history of motion pictures. The symbolism of Hollywood extends far beyond the statuette itself. Each year, the Oscars stage is designed to awe audiences, blending artistic vision with a nod to cinematic history. From sweeping geometric patterns to towering set pieces, the stage often evokes classical architecture and mythology, designed to impress millions of viewers worldwide. Some observers note that recurring motifs, triangles, spirals, and other geometric shapes draw on centuries of symbolic design, from ancient Egypt to Renaissance art, highlighting themes of creativity, ambition, and transformation. Hollywood has always been a place of duality, a dazzling facade for the public, with a far more complex and sometimes troubling world behind the scenes. For decades, insiders have spoken out about the pressures and abuses within the industry. Mel Gibson, in interviews dating back to the late 1990s, spoke candidly about the darker sides of Hollywood, including the exploitative behavior of certain powerful figures. He criticized how some producers manipulated actors and actresses, prioritizing control and sensationalism over artistry and consent. These revelations helped draw early attention to systemic issues in the industry, issues that would later become central to the Me Too movement, which began in earnest in 2017, exposing widespread sexual harassment and abuse across Hollywood and other industries worldwide. Gibson's warnings were not just about the art world, but about the human cost behind the glittering screen. He urged audiences and fellow actors to recognize the power dynamics at play and to advocate for ethical treatment on and off the set. In this way, the Oscars and the broader Hollywood stage become more than awards and performances. They are mirrors reflecting both the brilliance and the shadows of an industry that shapes culture on a global scale. There's a long-standing, uncomfortable truth in Hollywood. For decades, the industry has pressured actors, especially women, to compromise themselves for roles, often prioritizing sensationalism over talent. Patterns emerged in casting and awards recognition that were impossible to ignore. Some observers have noted that nudity and sexualized roles were disproportionately rewarded with nominations and critical acclaim, a reflection of systemic exploitation that persisted for decades. Studies of Hollywood casting and award trends show that explicit content has historically been overrepresented in celebrated films, highlighting deep-rooted issues of power imbalance and coercion. Remarkably, only a handful of Best Actress winners over the past 37 years secured their awards without participating in roles requiring sexualized exposure, underscoring the persistence of this troubling pattern. For those who entered Hollywood with only a love for film, the reality could be shocking. Mel Gibson, for example, realized that the industry was far more than lights, cameras, and storytelling. It was also a place where ambition, influence, and power intersected in ways that could be morally compromising. He spoke openly about the darker pressures actors faced and the ethical dilemmas behind the glitz and glamour. These revelations weren't limited to roles or casting. They extended to subtle manipulations, secretive practices, and the often inexplicable behaviors of powerful figures within the industry. I had my own suspicions about Hollywood, things that didn't quite add up, unusual behaviors and hidden warnings that seemed to surface at the strangest times. Then one night, a striking image etched itself into my mind. A glowing 666 atop a building, illuminated against the night sky. That moment crystallized everything I had feared. The industry wasn't just glamorous. It could be dark, unsettling, and far more manipulative than the public ever imagined. From that instant, I understood that some of my deepest, most disturbing suspicions about the hidden pressures and influences in Hollywood were, terrifyingly, grounded in reality. The industry pushed back hard against Mel Gibson, particularly after the release of The Passion of the Christ in 2004. The film, which depicted the final hours of Jesus with intense realism, drew both acclaim and fierce criticism. While some of the opposition came from debates over its graphic violence and historical interpretation, Gibson also faced resistance from studios and Hollywood insiders, who were wary of backing projects that challenged mainstream narratives or provoked controversy. Determined to tell stories he believed in, Gibson later took on Sound of Freedom, a film exposing the global scourge of child trafficking. Unable to secure studio financing, Hollywood studios reportedly declined to invest. He took on the project independently, funding much of it himself. The film sheds light on real-world criminal networks that exploit vulnerable children worldwide, highlighting an issue that has long been underreported. Gibson's perseverance reflects a broader truth about the intersection of art, power, and morality in Hollywood. Telling difficult, uncomfortable stories often comes at a personal and professional cost. By bringing attention to the realities of child exploitation and systemic abuses, he demonstrated the stakes involved in challenging entrenched power structures, showing that sometimes the most important stories are also the hardest to tell. Denzel Washington, though far more private than many of his peers, has long been aware of the pressures and moral compromises that can accompany fame. He and his wife, Pauletta, have spoken about stepping away from certain Hollywood events when the environment felt ethically uncomfortable or inappropriate. While the specifics of these experiences remain private, many actors and industry insiders have testified over the years about the darker sides of Hollywood's afterparties, pressures, exploitation, and systemic misconduct that rarely make headlines. Over the decades, whistleblowers and activists have exposed deeply troubling practices within the entertainment world. Figures like Gabriella Rico and Barbara Marx, among others, have spoken publicly about abuses in Hollywood, drawing attention to patterns of exploitation and misconduct. Even comedians and actors such as Roseanne Barr have, at times, used stark, metaphorical language to describe the pervasive exploitation she witnessed, emphasizing the psychological toll on those involved. While sensational claims often attract ridicule, broader investigations into systemic abuse have repeatedly confirmed that vulnerable individuals, especially young performers, can be manipulated or harmed in pursuit of profit or career advancement. One area that has drawn renewed attention in recent years is the exploitation of minors and trafficking networks connected to powerful elites, particularly following the revelations in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Emails, court documents, and testimony confirm the existence of highly organized criminal activity, which in turn has sparked calls for reform and increased oversight in industries where children and young adults are involved. These disclosures underscore the importance of transparency, ethics, and accountability in Hollywood and beyond. Concerns about the intersection of power, influence, and exploitation in Hollywood have long drawn attention from journalists, whistleblowers, and researchers. Allegations of systemic abuse within elite circles have been documented through court cases, investigative reporting, and survivor testimony, highlighting the need for accountability in industries that wield enormous cultural and economic power. Figures like Mel Gibson and Denzel Washington have consistently spoken out about unethical practices, the pressures actors face, and the moral compromises that often accompany fame. If their warnings are taken seriously, it becomes clear that Hollywood and the institutions surrounding it, including high-profile awards ceremonies like the Oscars, deserve careful scrutiny. Over decades, the industry has often hidden its more troubling practices behind glamour, spectacle, and secrecy. Today, however, more people are paying attention. Investigative journalism, survivor advocacy, and public awareness are shining a light on issues that were long ignored, revealing patterns of abuse, coercion, and exploitation. The questions remain urgent and unresolved. Will the world heed the warnings from those brave enough to speak out? Can society confront the uncomfortable truths about an industry that has shaped culture for generations? And ultimately, are we ready to hold Hollywood accountable, ensuring that talent, creativity, and artistry are celebrated without compromising ethics, dignity, or human rights? What do you think about the increasingly public scrutiny of Hollywood's culture and practices? Over the past decade, movements like Me Too, 2017, and Time's Up have sparked global conversations about accountability, with hundreds of industry figures facing allegations of harassment, abuse, or exploitation, and many studios implementing new codes of conduct in response. According to reports from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, entertainment ranks among the industries with the most publicly documented workplace discrimination and harassment claims in recent years. We've also seen a surge in investigative journalism and legal actions revealing systemic issues, from casting couch abuse to pay inequity. In 2019, for example, the U.S. women's national soccer team settlement and subsequent industry responses highlighted how entertainment and sports sectors alike are confronting old practices and demanding transparency. Now, more stories are emerging, and audiences worldwide are asking tough questions about power, influence, and ethical responsibility in Hollywood. Are we ready to look beyond the red carpet glamour, to demand safe, equitable workplaces for all artists, to recognize that talent and integrity should be the true currency of success? Join the conversation. Tell us in the comments below, what do you think about these ongoing conversations around accountability and culture in Hollywood? Are recent revelations enough to spark real change? And if you're curious to go deeper, don't forget to check out this other video, because the conversation isn't over and there's even more worth exploring.